Alright, I'm back, guys. Alright, education advocacy. ADF is also involved in education. Its efforts to deny rights and dignity to LGBTQ people, students, dates to at least 2005, when it was known as Alliance Defense Fund. That year, the group launched the so-called, quote, Day of Truth campaign with other groups, including Focus on the Family, to combat the promotion of the homosexual agenda. Day of Truth was meant to counter the ongoing, quote, Day of Silence held in April, in which students remained silent as a protest and to help spread awareness about the effects of anti-LGBTQ bullying. Whoa. So, the original Day of Truth website included a piece called, quote, The 10 Big Myths of Homosexual Behavior, end quote, provided by the anti-LGBTQ hate group Mission America. What? Well, that's pretty basic, but terrible. You're just, alright. America's just symbolic in their minds for being a hate group, I guess. Jeez. It also includes a fact sheet provided by now defunct ex-gay group Exodus, which included many false claims about LGBTQ people, including that deficiency of same-sex love in a person's background will cause that person to be LGBTQ. The sheet also claimed that LGBTQ people can change to heterosexual, and said that marriage between couples of the same sex should not be allowed as, quote, there are moral, social, and medical reasons that why homosexual behavior should not be affirmed, end quote. It also claimed that LGBTQ people are promiscuous, violent, and mentally ill. In 2009, Exodus took over the Day of Truth, but in September 2010 it pulled its support and gave it back to ADF, claiming that the event had become too divisive and confrontational. Nevertheless, the fact sheet was still publicly available that year. In 2011, Focus on the Family took over the Day of Truth and renamed it Day of Dialogue. Although ADF is still available for legal counsel for students, something that it claimed throughout the event's history. Day of Dialogue sounds just like saying hate speech or something. Like, it sounds simple enough. Whatever. It's terrible either way. ADF also promotes the use of specific language in efforts to discredit and undermine LGBTQ people and reproductive rights. A media kit available on the ADF website from 2012 through 2014 provided a page that listed its preferred terms in a media reference guide. Some examples include using homosexual agenda for the lesbian and gay civil rights movement, quote, cross-dressing, and, quote, sexually confused rather than the term transgender, quote, gender identity confusion / gender confusion, end quote. For gender identity, quote, leftist sexual indoctrination programs, end quote. For sexual education programs and health education, quote, sexual preference / choice, end quote, for sexual orientation. Jeez. Just any aspect of a preference, yeah, this seems pretty demanding. Okay, quote, sexually mutilated male / female, self-proclaimed male / female, biologically male / female, end quote. For intersex people / male / female, quote, special legal protections, privileged class, end quote, for equal rights, equal protection, and protected class, and using quotation marks around the word marriage when referring to same-sex couples, and around the word hate when referred to hate crimes. Like other anti-LGBT groups, ADF opposes anti-bullying initiatives that attempt to protect LGBTQ students. In 2012, ADF teamed up with Focus on the Family to create a yardstick to compare what makes a good anti-bullying policy versus what makes a bad policy. A good policy by ADF measure does not single out groups for special protection rather than prohibits bullying against all students, and, quote, does not use materials or lessons plans for homosexual activist groups. A, quote, bad policy, quote, singles out sexual orientation, gender identity, etc. for special protection, end quote, and, quote, requires tolerance training and similar programs using materials and lessons plans crafted by homosexual activist groups. Yo, even in where I live, I'm starting to feel like an open presence of like gay people, because it's never really even brought up at work, but because pretty much everybody's straight there, and I certainly don't bring it up. But I heard my coworkers just talking about how like they like Caitlyn Jenner just because she's anti-gay or gay marriage or something like that. And I imagine they're anti-trans too, so they're just tokenizing Caitlyn Jenner. Like, how stupid. Yeah. Okay. Policies that prohibited bullying based on sexual orientation and gender identities. The quote, the materials say, quote, open the doors to advancement of the political agenda of homosexuality activist groups in schools, end quote. The adoption of such policies, the materials add, has resulted in, quote, public schools subjecting young students to books, lessons, and programs designed to advance the homosexual gender and undermine the traditional notion of sexuality and the family. The yardstick also states that bullies should not be educated to think differently about their victims, and states that schools should limit anti-bullying policy to on-campus incidents, including cyberbullying, and that public schools should not be required to report bullying. Wow. They're like openly asking for terrorism. So, oh, hold on. Yeah, this is I remember reading this a little bit before I started reading this in videos, but this is like a little beyond what I expected in terms of a political approach. Just attacking, just raising children to be hatred, to be hateful fucks. Okay, I mean, even back in my day, like, people were still hateful and like said some crazy shit, but I mean, assuming you had a, because everybody, even though there were still people that were saying heinous shit back then, there were still good people that were saying edgy shit. But if you had a kind heart and your friend had a kind heart and he was saying or she was saying edgy shit, you kind of knew that they were on good terms and you knew what they were thinking. But nowadays it's not so, there's no way to know, because just actual bigotry more than usual is coming out of the woodwork. I don't think it's an excuse to be like, well, back in my day things were simpler and you knew, but because there's no returning to that because of just it's hard to explain right now. Okay, where was I? One ADF attorney, Eric Stanley, told the 2014 conference in Nashville, Tennessee, that Matthew Shepard's murder has been, quote, debunked as an anti-gay hate crime that had been used by pro-LGBTQ activists to advance the, quote, homosexual legal agenda, end quote. This claim is a popular conspiracy theory among anti-LGBTQ groups, turning on the theory that Shepard was murdered over drugs or for some other reason unrelated to his sexual orientation. But it is a claim that has been debunked. Alright. In recent years, ADF has also been working quietly across the country to deny rights to trans students. Partnering once again with Focus on the Family in 2014, ADF developed, quote, a student physical privacy policy. For schools that offer guidelines meant to protect students in locker rooms for bathrooms. The group emailed a copy of the policy to every school district in the country in 2014, included a letter warning that any school district supporting of trans-inclusive policies would expose itself and its teachers to tort liability. The letter misrepresented trans identity and gender identity in general in attempts to portray trans inclusive policies as subjecting students as of one sex to interacting in bathrooms and locker rooms with students of the opposite sex. It also echoes the frequent claim of other anti-LGBT groups that suggest that trans women are just male, quote, predators, end quote, seeking access to women's bathrooms and locker rooms. Jeez. Oh my god. Yeah, Erin in the morning, if you read up on what she has to say, she's like a journalist. Obviously, if you're paying attention to my shit, you probably know about her by now. But she's been talking about a lot of stuff like this, and like the bathroom bills honestly make no sense. Like you're screwed if you do, screwed if you don't, kind of thing. Yeah, they're not really making it easier on purpose. Okay. ADF has made goods on its threats to sue school that accommodate trans students. In early September 2016, ADF filed a lawsuit against a school district in Minnesota that suit claims that cisgender girls were caused distress because the trans students who identify as female were using school facilities designed for women. The trans girls had requested use of the facilities in 2014 after transitioning, and the school district agreed in 2016, in early 2016. Aside from playing to the myth of predatory behavior by trans girls, ADF consistently misgendered the trans girls in its lawsuit and accused her of dancing to loud music, quote, with sexually explicit lyrics in the locker room while twerking, grinding, and lifting up his skirt to reveal his underwear. I feel like you could just find any person doing this. This is not news, or you wouldn't even notice this. This is like, it's not even a drop in the bucket. It's literally nothing. Obviously, it's not like good conduct to be in a locker room doing that. I'm just saying, it's weird, common shit that is not really socially acceptable, but you can't really do anything about that. Alright. Religious liberty. Since the legalization of marriage for same-sex couples in the United States in June 2015, ADF has ramped up its involvement in so-called religious liberty legislation and lawsuits that portray discrimination against LGBTQ people as a right. Across the country, opponents of LGBTQ equality are working to persuade state legislators to pass laws known as Religious Freedom Restoration Acts that allow individuals and businesses to deny goods and services to LGBTQ people on the basis of their privately held religious beliefs. The RFA-RA narrative often includes the idea that Christians are a, quote, persecuted minority victimized by a secular and pro-LGBTQ, quote, agenda, end quote. In keeping with the falsehood that Christians are a persecuted minority and no longer have free speech rights, ADF officials make frequent references to losing even more rights, often within their overall idea that things like the homosexual agenda are taking away the rights of Christians who speak out against it. Sears gave an interview in 2014 to The Remnant, a radical traditionalist Catholic newspaper, in which he seemed to be promoting that narrative. He said that history demonstrates that a democracy without values turns into totalitarianism, and that utopians seek to reorder society by, quote, forging draconian new laws and forcing new behaviors on others, end quote. Sears often said, quote, these dictatorial decrees are done in the name of equality, which really means the subjugation of individuals, families, and society to the state and its currently fashionable schemes such utopias seek to set and control, end quote. Yeah, like taking away women's rights because family policy advocates want your children pregnant. Yeah, that's trans people, sure, okay. He claimed that violence and destruction results, quote, with punishment imposed on all who oppose the fabrication of their new world orders, end quote. So I don't even know if I've ever even heard a Democrat say new world order. I think I heard George W. Bush back when he was running as president, or was a president, he said New World Order. And I mean, a Republican saying that didn't seem to raise many red flags as far as I know. It's all just a Democrat like thing for some reason. Okay. ADF, which claimed at least in 2016 on its website that it does not promote legislation or lobby government officials, was involved in both drafting and promoting Arizona's SB 1062 and RFRA bill that was eventually vetoed by Government Jan Brewer in early 2015 after a backlash following its initial passage. ADF was also intimately involved in crafting Mississippi HB 1523 Act, which passed early in 2016. It was signed by Governor Phil Bryant. The law allows people who do not agree with marriage equality or LGBT rights to withhold goods and service without fear of legal persecution. The bill includes protection for those who believe that sex outside of marriage is bad and for those who believe in strictly binary gender identity. Quote, or sorry, not quote, I don't know what I'm talking about. The Clarion Ledger newspaper discovered that ADF helped write HB 1523 and helped write Bryant's signing speech. Oh, well that's great. Emails obtained by the paper revealed that former ADF senior counsel Austin Nimox emailed Bryant's administration 2 days before the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on marriage equality in June 2015. The email included an attached, quote, metal executive order, end quote, that would, quote, prevent state governments from discriminating against their citizens because of their views about or actions concerning marriage. The Mississippi law was challenged in court shortly after its passage. U.S. District Judge Carlton Reeves blocked it from becoming law in late June, saying that the law grants privileges to people who hold certain moral convictions, which, quote, violate both the guarantee of religious neutrality and the promise of equal protection of the laws, end quote. Bryant said he would appeal, and ADF announced it would serve as his co-counsel. In June 2017, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reversed Reeves' holding that the plaintiffs lacked standing in the case, so the statutes went into effect. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to consider the case. It's a lot to take in, because there's a lot that's kind of just very flat in terms of events, but yeah. Even behind the scenes when shit was being legalized, these people were trying to pull it down. ADF attorneys have also offered testimony and legal analysis to state legislators in Kansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Colorado, specifically in favor of restrictive bathroom bills that exclude trans people and against legislation that protects LGBTQ people from discrimination. An ADF attorney also testified via telephone to the South Dakota legislator on a religious freedom bill. ADF has been involved in other skirmishes regarding religious liberty, as when it attempted to manufacture a controversy in 2014 in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, by falsely claiming that the owners of commercial wedding chapel were about to be arrested and jailed for refusing to marry couples of the same sex. The controversy dissolved when it was revealed that the chapel fell under religious exemption rules, and the owner of the chapel told local media that they had never been contacted by ADF attorneys, who insisted were emailing city officials. A city spokesman stated that the city had never threatened to jail the chapel owner or take legal actions against any kind. In 2016, a federal judge tossed almost all of the ADF's claims in the Idaho case. Well, it's good they didn't just immediately believe that. They must have known rumors of what they fucking stand for and just, like, they can't be that dumb. But, like, judges can't just learn another language for immigrants. Well, I guess that's a different topic, but it's just, they have the common sense to fucking not take these people's claims, this fucking hate group's claims seriously in this obvious attempt to slander. But, yeah. You win some, you lose some, I guess. Okay. Another strategy ADF employs is, quote, pre-employment challenges, that is, legal challenges to non-discrimination ordinances that protect LGBTQ people before a business or church is found in violation. In such case, we filed in Colorado in September 2016. ADF claimed Colorado's non-discrimination protections are unconstitutional because they infringe on a Christian web designer's freedoms of speech and religion. The state's law makes it illegal to refuse services on the basis of sexual orientation or to advertise discriminatory intent. The federal judge upheld Colorado's law in 2019, and the 2020 an appeal by the web designer was pending before the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. A similar case was filed by ADF in 2016 and involved two calligraphers who challenged a city ordinance in Phoenix, Arizona, prohibited discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in public or accommodations. The two had not been asked to provide goods or services for the same-sex wedding, but they sued nevertheless so that their eventual refusal to do so would not be illegal. ADF argued that the ordinance violates the woman's right to free speech. A judge rejected that claim in 2016 and denied ADF a preliminary injunction. The judge noted that the plaintiffs, quote, confused conduct with excessive speech, end quote, and found that the law was not a burden to them. That is because what it does prevent them from refusing to provide services or products to the same-sex couples, it does not stop them from publicizing their religious views about marriage equality and LGBTQ people in general. I feel like these people should get the hell over themselves about their bigoted asses, but like I do think that it would go against their bigoted beliefs to be professional with them like that. Well, I mean, I get, that's whatever. Like, if we want to persecute Christians for being bigoted pieces of shit, that's fine, but I do think this would go against their rights a little bit, and I'm fine with that. Okay. Trump era. After the election of Donald Trump as president, anti-LGBT groups were granted unprecedented access to the White House. ADF had 55 affiliated attorneys who had previously been identified as serving in various legislative and judicial capacities on the state and federal levels, was among those exerting influence over the administration. In 2017, Attorney General Jeff Sessions constituted with ADF before issuing a memo outlining guidelines on interpreting federal religious freedom protections to government agencies and departments. ADF Senior Counsel Greg Baylor noted that Sessions had met with the group in a series of, quote, listening sessions that Sessions himself had convened. Well, that's a mouthful. Okay, Sessions had addressed ADF's closed-door, quote, summit on religious liberty, end quote, at the Ritz-Carlton, Laguna Niguel in Dana Point, California. The event was closed to the press, but following attention in the media, his remarks were leaked to the right-wing partisan site, The Federalist. In another striking move, the Department of Justice filed an amicus brief before oral arguments were made to the Supreme Court in September 2017 in support of ADF's masterpiece Cake Shop lawsuit, in which a Colorado baker refused to create a wedding cake for same-sex couples. Jack Phillips, the baker, refused a couple in 2012. Marriage for same-sex couples were not yet legal nationally, but the couple were planning to be married in Massachusetts, where it was legal. Colorado's state law forbids discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and the couples filed a complaint with the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which found that Philip had discriminated against the couple. The complaint resulted in a lawsuit against Philip that was argued before the Supreme Court in December 2017. Arguments were made by ADF Christian Wagoner, but also in U.S. Solicitor General Noel Francisco, who may have been an ADF-affiliated attorney. The Nation reported that on two ADF press releases, Francisco was listed as an allied attorney. though ADF later claimed that their, quote, media department got it wrong, end quote. ADF made several other changes to its website following the Nation's report. The Democracy Forward Foundation sued the Department of Justice in April 2018 to compel compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, stating that the DOJ has, quote, failed to sufficiently respond to plaintiffs' request for records concerning connections between Noel Francisco, Solicitor General of the United States, and the Alliance Defending Freedom, end quote. The U.S. Supreme Court issued a narrow ruling on Masterpiece in June 2018 in which the majority of states that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission had displayed bias against Phillips' religious beliefs when it sanctioned him. But the ruling upheld protections for LGBTQ people and applied only to the Masterpiece case, thus avoiding the larger issue of whether businesses can discriminate on the basis of religion. The court also issued a ruling in 2018 on another ADF case in which Stutzman, owner of Arlane's Flowers in Washington, Massachusetts, refused to create flower arrangements for a same-sex couple planning a wedding. So I might have to rethink this. I would have to say, even though it's related to a same-sex thing, this is like such a neutral act that you could do for a same-sex couple. So, like, making a cake and arranging flowers or anything that could be arbitrarily done for a straight person, it just seems kind of stupid to deny them of that. I might have to die on that hill. Like, I've never really thought about this homosexual cake making by a bigot thing, because it's just like, the person should obviously get the hell over themselves and make the cake, but whatever. Okay. Where the frickin' hell was I? Oh. There, the court sent the case back to the Washington State Supreme Court to hear again in the wake of Masterpiece, thus opening another chance for ADF to attempt to bring it back to the Supreme Court. In June 2019, the state Supreme Court unanimously ruled against Stutzman, but ADF again asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear the case. What? Why? They didn't want to do it, so why the fuck would you do it again? Okay. ADF continues to be extremely active in terms of free speech laws against colleges and universities via its Center for Academic Freedom project. Oh, that's right. They're freaking out about college people being homosexual. This isn't even like a think of the children thing. Unless they're freaking out about the birth rate and they just assume gay people don't want kids and won't have kids because it's like biologically incompatible, yada yada, as if they can't do surrogacy or something like that. But yeah, I don't get it. They really do move the freaking goalpost, and I know that's obvious. It's really annoying. Alright, it has partnered with the libertarian group Young Americans for Liberty in several lawsuits against the colleges, including Kellogg Community College in Michigan, University of Massachusetts Amherst settled in June 2018, and the University of California Berkeley settled in June 2018. In another ADF lawsuit brought by a Christian student against Gwinnett Community College in Georgia, the Department of Justice filed a brief in support of the student who claimed his religious rights were violated when it was not allowed to hand out Christian pamphlets on campus. ADF sued and the college changed its policy. As a result, the lawsuit was thrown out in federal courts. ADF appealed that decision because the court failed to address whether the student's constitutional rights were violated. ADF also filed a lawsuit against Arkansas State University. Okay, it seems like these people are just finding reasons to complain about really small stuff. Like, they're not even trying that hard. ADF also filed Arkansas State University in December 2017 on behalf of the students group Turning Point USA, claiming that the university has a too restrictive speech policy. Turning Point USA has been dogged by the discovery that a few of its officers and members have ties to the white supremacist alt-right, as when former Turning Point USA Florida field director Juan Pablo Andrade was attending a Turning Point USA student conference in December 2017 and was filmed in a hotel room paid by Turning Point, saying that the only thing that the Nazis didn't get right was that they didn't keep going. Wow. Okay. In May 2018, ADF was dealt a blow in one of its anti-trans lawsuits against a school district in Bayertown, Pennsylvania. The Third U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, in an unusual move, ruled from the bench less than an hour after moral arguments, striking down ADF's attempts to ensure the further marginalization of trans students in the Bayertown area school district. The district had implemented a trans-inclusive policy in 2016 that allowed students to use bathroom facilities in accordance with their gender identity. ADF sued on behalf of several students who claimed that they felt uncomfortable sharing facilities with a trans classmate, claiming that the guidelines violated Title 9 and also the student's right to privacy. Title 9 prohibits sex discrimination in schools. The Court Circuit's ruling also pointed out that anti-trans sentiment underlying the lawsuits, stating that the appellant's, quote, real objection is to the presence of transgender students, and not to any environment that their presence creates, end quote. Well, that's pretty true and straight to the face of facts, but I don't know. I mean, what can you say to these people other than, yeah, you just don't like these people? Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I feel like it's unfortunate that you can't really say much. The allegations, the ruling further noted, quote, include an assertion that a cisgender student was harassed merely by a transgender student washing their student's own hands in the bathroom or changing in a locker room. That is not the type of conduct that supports the Title IX hostile environment claim, end quote. ADF lost again in June 2018 in its pre-enforcement lawsuits. Legal challenges to non-discrimination ordinances that protect LGBTQ people before a business is found in violation. In this case, the Arizona Court of Appeals for Division I ruled that the Phoenix-based Truth and Nib calligraphy studio could not legally violate the city's non-discrimination protections because of the owner's religious beliefs. The studio had not yet discriminated against any LGBT people, but believed that the ordinance prohibited discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation should be overturned or should not apply to religious beliefs. The court referred repeatedly to the Masterpiece ruling to explain why Russian Nib should not discriminate. The ruling stated, quote, we recognize that the law allowing appellants to refuse service to customers based on sexual orientation would constitute a, quote, grave and continuing harm, end quote, in that allowing, quote, a vendor who provides goods and services for marriage and weddings to refuse similar services for gay persons would result in a community-wide stigma inconsistent with the history and dynamics of civil rights laws that ensure equal rights access to goods, services, and public accommodations. Alright. In April 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to hear 3 cases that would directly affect the lives of LGBTQ people. All 3 deal with whether existing federal bans on sex discrimination in the workplace also prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. One of the cases is RJ and GR, Harris Funeral Homes versus Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. ADF is defending a Michigan-based funeral home that was sued by a longtime employee who said that she was fired because she came out as transgender. The appellate court ruled in favor of the employee, and the Supreme Court heard an oral argument in the case of October 8th, 2019. ADF claims on its... Oh, by the way, like, um, this culture war really super took off, I think, in the 20s, in the 2020s, but obviously it was there peaking, or starting to peak in, like, 2014, I think, because I think that was the ACLU situation, but yeah, a lot of discrimination, I guess, was still happening, or attempts to discriminate, before Nazis started to actually be super obvious in America, like like common, like actually common, not just like you hear about a rally sometimes, like okay. ADF claims on its website that lawsuit is trying to protect people from unelected agencies, end quote, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, but it also relies on anti-trans myths to claim that allowing transgender women to keep their jobs undermines cisgender women's rights because, according to ADF, cisgender men will masquerade as women to access services for women. Yeah, I don't know about that. You're just gonna get your ass kicked and beaten up just to possibly get a raise or something, or virtue signal. Like, that's weird. That's just such a risky attempt. Pretty sure that, I mean, obviously it's a bigoted thing to say, but I feel like practically it wouldn't make any sense for anyone to do that. Okay. ADF also claims the funeral owner and the employees parted ways when in fact the employee was fired. Throughout 2019, ADF attorneys and spokespeople appeared in a variety of news reports regarding their lawsuits against transgender people. ADF engages in misgendering people and refers to trans people as, quote, biological men, or use male pronouns for transgender women. Deliberate misgendering is considered anti-trans harassment and harmful because it denies them their identity and personhood. In January 2019, ADF attorneys Christian Wagner appeared on Fox News and repeatedly misgendered a trans woman who sued Colorado cake maker Jack Phillips, an ADF client, for refusing to make a cake for her. In July 2019, ADF's Christian Halcombe appeared on NBC's Today, where she referred to transgender female athletes as biological males. Okay. I'll be back, guys.